August is coming up fast and there's a ton of games releasing in the coming month, and a lot of people are certainly anticipating some of these games. I personally am looking forward to seeing how a lot of these games turn out, but there are some concerns regarding some of these upcoming games as well. Either way though, August's got a pretty good lineup with some adventure, some Star Wars, and more, so here are 10 of the most anticipated releases for the month of August. First up on this list has to be Black Myth: Wukong, which has been previously described as a Souls-like, but Game Science, the devs of the game, have said that they don't really consider this title to be a Souls-like. From the gameplay we've seen thus far, it's more similar to other action games like God of War and The Witcher. Black Myth: Wukong lets you play as the Destined One, a monkey based on a character named Sun Wukong from the classical Chinese novel Journey to the West. The game is mainly based around linear progression with various different bosses and enemies, and your combat abilities include spells and melee combat. There's also a skill tree like we see in most RPG titles. It's currently one of the most wishlisted games over on Steam, and it honestly looks really fantastic. I've talked about Black Myth: Wukong in a couple of videos here on the channel, and it does look really neat, and I like that it takes inspiration from Chinese mythology. The game comes out on August 20. Star Wars Outlaws has definitely been getting some flack with its recent gameplay reveal, but either way, I suppose it's still a pretty anticipated release for a good number of people. There's a lot of concern about the repetition and the Ubisoft formula impacting this game, but either way, Outlaws is about Kay Vess, a scoundrel that assembles a team to go on a heist to pay off a crime syndicate. Star Wars Outlaws is set to be a third-person open-world action game where you can use melee attacks and a blaster that includes several firing modes. You can also use other tools to your advantage as well as the environment to help you. You'll be able to interact with groups like the Pike Syndicate, there's a wanted system for crimes committed, and there's dialogue options that will impact the mission outcomes. There have been some critiques from what we've seen so far, as Ubisoft says the game has gone gold, but many are concerned about the graphical quality and the gameplay quality, as well as the fact that the game's price is pretty high and includes a season pass, which is definitely something bothering people since it's a single-player game. However you feel about it, Star Wars Outlaws releases on August 30. Another Star Wars game to add to the list is the remastered version of Star Wars Bounty Hunter. The original version released back in 2002 and was on a limited number of consoles, but the remaster is coming out on all platforms, including the PS4 and Xbox One. The title will give the classic some updated visuals, updated controls, and a Boba Fett skin that can be used after completing the main campaign. The game revolves around you playing as Jango Fett and tells his story before Attack of the Clones. We learn how Fett got his Slave 1 ship, how he met Zam Wesell, and how he became chosen as the template for the clone troopers. The story follows Fett after he's hired by Sith Lord Darth Tyrannus to eliminate a Jedi named Komari Vosa. In the midst, he becomes involved in a conspiracy for death stick trafficking and clashes with a ton of other criminals. There are some concerns with players though, since Asper is in charge of the remaster, and they've definitely had some issues with remastering other Star Wars games like Battlefront. Many releases from Asper have had performance issues and released in a pretty bad state. Either way though, let's hope the game releases in a good state on August 1st. I've talked about Deathbound before on this channel. The upcoming party-based Souls-like is set in a world where faith and science clash and is being developed by Trial Forge Studio, which is based in Brazil. The title allows you to play as several characters, each with their own skills, combat styles, backstories, and more. The devs said that a lot of inspiration for this title comes from Dark Souls, but they also incorporated horror vibes like Silent Hill and Resident Evil. Deathbound is set in a world where technology from the past is mixed with the present medieval world. The game mainly takes place in a city called Akratia, which is falling into ruin under a crusade. There's a lot of enemies to fight and bosses to contend with, as with any Souls-like, but the character switching feature is pretty unique and lets you absorb forms to create a party of 4 heroes. The game is set to release on August 8. I guess this counts as a game for the purposes of this video, but World of Warcraft: The War Within is the upcoming 10th expansion for World of Warcraft, and is set within Khaz Algar within Azeroth. The narrative revolves around the Harbinger of the Void, who mobilizes the Nerubian forces and poses a threat to Azeroth. The expansion will see the return of dynamic flying, which was initially introduced back in Dragonflight. Of course, dungeons and raids will play a big role, and there are 8 new dungeons in this expansion. There's opportunity for solo or co-op play in things called Delves, which lets players fight bosses and get some pretty cool loot. It's World of Warcraft, so of course it's a highly anticipated expansion to release. There's going to be a new Earth and Allied race, class-specific hero talent trees, warbands, and more. The expansion's early access begins on August 22nd, but the game officially releases on August 26th. Steamworld Heist 2 is the upcoming anticipated sequel to Steamworld Heist and tells the story of Captain Leeway and his crew as they uncover the threat that is looming over the Great Sea. The game features turn-based gunfights where your angle of aiming lets your shots ricochet and can help give you an advantage against enemies. You're expected to use the environment to your aid as well. You get a crew and each member has different weapons, abilities, equipment, and more. The game features real-time naval combat, the ability to raid enemy bases and get loot to boost your crew, and more. The visuals look really neat and there's a lot going on in this game. There's a rich and intricate job system as well as over 150 guns, utility items, and ship equipment in the title. The soundtrack is being done again by steam-powered Giraffe. Steamworld Heist 2 releases on August 8. I've never particularly been a fan of any sports games, but I know that there's definitely an audience out there for Madden titles, including NFL. The new game is apparently powered by Boom Tech, which has realistic collisions, physics-based tackling, and new gameplay animations to make your experience feel more immersive. The hit stick has also been refreshed in this title, and the team is focusing heavily on the immersion factor. There will be realistic franchise changes, 2 new commentary crews, and more. You have dynamic storylines in Madden NFL 25, and there is also Team Builder, which is a web-based customization tool that lets you design a team that matches your style. There's also new featured plays and more. I'm sure that if you're a fan of Madden NFL titles, this is going to be a pretty exciting one for you. It seems like there's a lot of new changes and new improvements coming to this year's title, and it releases on August 16. Visions of Mana is an upcoming action RPG that is the first mainline game in the series since Dawn of Mana released way back in 2006. The game takes place in a fantasy world where you play as Val, a young man from the fire village of Tenea. He accompanies his friend as she undergoes a pilgrimage to the Mana tree, which controls the flow of mana in the world. There are other companions that accompany the pair on the journey, and the game features real-time combat with enemies, as well as a semi-open world that has large areas that you can freely explore as you advance the story. Every character in the game has many combat classes that can be unlocked by acquiring spirit vessels. The classes can also be switched freely as you play, and I'm sure fans of the series are pretty excited to see another entry after so many years. Visions of Mana releases on August 29. Volgarr the Viking II is an upcoming 2D action platformer that follows the story of Volgarr as a barbarian king in a new form. The sequel includes hardcore precision as a key to the gameplay, with one small move leading to instant death. There are new power-ups, new magic forms, new enemy types, and a new soundtrack as well. The sequel is set to include the same 1980s style arcade level of difficulty, but it does include some new things like checkpoints, save states, and an undead mode. You can pretty much decide how difficult your experience will be, but there are some accessibility features for people who want a little bit of an easier time. The worlds are larger, and there are even multiple endings in this sequel. If you're a fan of platformers, then this is definitely an interesting game to check out. Volgarr 2 releases on August 6. If you're a fan of Gundam, then this should be pretty exciting for you. Gundam Breaker 4 is coming out in August and will let you customize your own gunpla and play in combat missions. You get access to 2 weapons at once, and you can break parts off of enemies and add them to your own collection to use. There are over 250 base kits, and you can combine parts, change their color, look, decals, and more to create your own ultimate mecha. There are online and single-player game modes where you can fight against others and test out your skills and weapons. There's also SD Gundam and parts included in this title. There is co-op with up to 3 players as well. If you enjoy fighting games but want a Gundam experience, then I'm sure you'll be excited for Gundam Breaker 4, which releases on August 29 for PlayStation, Steam, and Nintendo Switch. And with that being said, thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed that video, feel free to leave a like and subscribe with notifications set to all so you never miss out on a single upload. Comment below what you think about the games on this list and which ones you're the most excited for. Don't forget to check out our website for gaming news, guides, and more. The link to that, as well as all our other important links, are in the description below.